was about to get out to open the door, was stunned to see that Orm had already gotten out of the car, even though he had not yet moved. With quick steps, Ying got out and walked over to Orm, who stood waiting by the door of his apartment building. "Nang, I'm sorry about what happened earlier," Ying said, finally getting the courage to speak first. There was a regretful tone in her voice. Orm smiled slightly, then looked at Ying. "It's okay, Ping. I know Ping's intentions were to help me, though. His help was a bit excessive." The smile briefly appeared, then disappeared again, leaving a faint impression that was difficult to translate. Ying took a deep breath, then sighed softly. "Once again, I apologize," she said, still feeling guilty that she had crossed the line by kissing Orm so suddenly. Seeing the guilty expression on Ying's face, Orm smiled gently as he rubbed her back lightly. "It's okay, Fi. We don't need to talk about it anymore," he said in a soft voice, trying to calm Ying down. After a few moments of silence, Ying finally asked, "By the way, why didn't you want to talk to him earlier, when I know you still love him?" Orm looked down for a moment, letting out a breath before answering. "I just didn't want to enter Peeling as life again. If I talk to her even for a moment, it will make it hard for me to go back," he answered honestly, his eyes showing an implicit sadness. "Love life is complicated, isn't it?" murmured Ying with a small smile, trying to break the ice. "Yes, it is," Orm replied with a faint smile. "If Ping can't open her heart yet, don't give breaking any hope," he continued in a soft, yet serious tone. "Breaking is my best friend. Fi, if you hurt her, I will." Orm clenched his fist in front of Ying, then chuckled, "Giving this as a gift to you." Ying was shocked and pretended to be scared, but soon he laughed. "Oh hoo, you're really scary," she said, laughing even harder. "Take it easy. You don't have to worry. I can manage everything without hurting breaking," she added, trying to reassure Orm. Orm laughed softly at Ying's reaction. "I believe in Ping," he replied finally with a genuine smile. After a moment of conversation, Ying said goodbye. "Okay, then I'll go home first." Orm nodded slowly. "Yes, Fi, I'm sorry if I made Ping have to leave early when the event wasn't even over yet," he said softly, feeling guilty. Ying rubbed Orm's back gently, then shook his head. "It's not your fault. I don't like crowds either. I'd rather go home and sleep," she replied with a small smile, trying to make Orm feel calmer. "All right then, be careful on the road, Ping," Orm said as he waved his hand. Ying waved back at Orm. "I'll see you around," he said, before heading back to the car. Orm stood where he was, waving until Ying's car slowly disappeared from his sight. After making sure the car was out of sight, Orm turned around and walked into the apartment building. A bright morning greeted Ling, who started her day with her usual workout routine. However, today was different. Ling felt exhausted. In the past few days, her busy life as an actress had made her exercise less, so her body was now feeling a little heavy. Sitting down to rest, Ling took a sip of water that soothed her throat and wiped the sweat from her face with the towel lying beside her. "Ling," came a voice from behind the door. "Best," the assistant called out to her. Ling turned around, finding Best standing in the doorway with a friendly smile. "Breakfast is ready. Want some breakfast now?" asked Best politely. "Okay, Fi," Ling replied as he got up slowly. She left the gym and made her way to her room to shower, freshen up and change. A few minutes later, feeling ready and presentable, Ling picked up the cell phone lying on the table. As she walked down the stairs to the dining room, she frowned. There were so many missed calls from unknown numbers on her screen. It must be a prankster again, she muttered, recalling her experience of getting calls from fans who had somehow gotten her personal number just as he was about to sit down. However, his phone rang again, displaying the same number. This time, curiosity made him press the pickup button. His casual face slowly turned serious as he listened to the voice on the other end. A few minutes later, after hanging up, Ling quickly stood up, looking hurried. "Where are you going, Ling? Didn't you have breakfast first?" asked Best, surprised to see Ling suddenly preparing to leave. "We have to go to the police station now," Ling replied briefly, then rushed to her room to get her bag. She returned to Best, who was still confused. "We leave now," Ling ordered in a stern tone. "Yes, Kun Ling," Best replied as he followed Ling's quick steps out of the house and into the car. On the way to the police station, Ling's mind was full of questions. Arriving there, she rushed in and was surprised to find Min, a person she knew, already handcuffed. In the corner of the room, Min sat with a policeman. "What's going on?" asked Ling with a confused face, trying to make sense of the situation she had just seen. "Please sit down first, Kun Ling," Min said quietly, gesturing to the chair beside her. Ling nodded, sitting beside Min with a questioning look on her face. "So, what's going on?" she asked again. A policeman in front of her then began the explanation. "We have summoned Kin Ling for further questioning regarding the Kun Min case," he said in a formal tone. "From the information we got, over the past few days, Kun Min has been found guilty of drug use and physically abusing Kun Min." The policeman then showed Min's cell phone to Line. Besides that, Kun Min also kept Kin Ling's private photos and videos taken from hidden cameras he installed in the room and bathroom. The statement left Ling speechless. With trembling hands, she accepted the phone. Her eyes widened at the sight of the various photos and videos of her undressed. An overwhelming sense of shock and anger washed over her. After putting the phone back, Ling stood up, approaching Min, who looked down with an apologetic face. With unstoppable emotion, Ling pulled Min's shirt collar and looked at him sharply. "Why did you do this to me?" she asked in a voice full of anger. Min didn't answer, only his head kept bowing, as if avoiding Ling's sharp gaze. "I'm sick of you. Let's end all these lies. I'm not your on-camera boyfriend anymore," Ling shouted angrily. "Ling," Min finally raised his head, holding Ling's hand. "This is all slander from Min. I didn't do that." Min, who was sitting near them, immediately defended herself. "You can't lie anymore, Min. It's all been proven, so don't blame others," she said firmly. "Damn you!" An angry Min clenched her fists as if ready to attack Min. "Hit me. Do it like you always do," challenged Min boldly, her face coming closer to Min. "Calm down, everyone," exclaimed the police, trying to ease the tension. Min invited Ling to sit back down with the police. Ling took a deep breath, trying to calm down from the anger that was still overwhelming. "So, Kun Ling was not aware of all these photos and videos?" the police asked Ling. "I didn't know." Ling shook his head slowly, his voice sounding hoarse. "I also don't know when and how he was able to install cameras in my house." The police nodded, taking down Ling's statement. "All right, we have received this report. and Kunmin will be detained for further investigation. We will contact Ling and Kunmin if additional information is needed. Ling and Min finally ended their conversation with the police. However, as they were about to stand up, Min suddenly knelt down in front of Ling, hugging her legs. "Ling, I'm sorry. Don't leave me. I can't live without you," Min pleaded, his hands tightly holding Ling's legs. "We never really dated." "Remember that," Ling asserted with conviction. "I'd rather die than be without you," sighed the Min, looking at Ling with a desperate look. "Then just do it. I also want to know if someone like you can really die," Ling challenged with a cold stare, her temper peaking again as she kicked Min, who was still hugging her leg. Min fell staggering, but he did not retaliate. Ling, who now really didn't want to see Min's face again, walked away, leaving the man he once trusted under the sharp gaze of the police and best, who followed him with concern. Ling stepped out of the police station with heavy steps. He didn't go straight to his car. Instead, she chose to sit on one of the chairs outside the police station. Ling took a deep breath, trying to control her frantic thoughts. She rubbed her hands over her face, massaging her forehead, which was throbbing from the emotional stress and shocking information she had received today. "Ling," the familiar voice made her gasp and raise her head. Before her stood Min, not far from her. Min stepped cautiously closer, then asked, "May I sit here?" "Yes," Ling replied briefly, nodding and inviting Min to sit down. Min took her place beside her. A few moments passed in awkward silence. Although Min occasionally glanced at Ling, no words came from her aunt. They were silent, each lost in their own thoughts, until Min finally opened her voice. "I apologize for everything, Ling," Min said, her voice soft and regretful. Ling turned her head and looked at her with an astonished look. "What is Min apologizing for?" she asked. Min took a deep breath before answering. "For bringing you and Orm into the situation. I should have told you from the start that Min and I were dating," he said, looking at Ling guiltily. Ling looked at Min, confusion evident on her face. "Dating Min?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "Yes. I've been dating him long before you got into a relationship with him," Min replied, looking down deeply, feeling guilty. "So you were gay and dating Min all along?" asked Ling slowly, as if confirming what she had just heard. Min shrugged, smiling a little. "How did you know I was gay?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "From someone, but being gay isn't a bad thing," Ling replied with a faint smile, trying to be reassuring. Min smiled bitterly, then sighed. "If I hadn't allowed Min to date you in the first place, maybe this problem would never have happened. I was too stupid to trust him all this time," she said, her voice sounding bitter. Ling patted Min's shoulder lightly, trying to calm her down. "It's okay, Min. Everything has happened, and the important thing is that Min is now in prison to take responsibility for his actions," Ling replied in a soothing tone. Min nodded slowly, then fiddled with her fingers restlessly. After a while, she looked back at Ling. "And Orm loves you very much. Do you know that?" she said softly. Ling smiled bitterly, bowing her head. "I'm not sure Orm still loves me. Isn't he already dating Kunying?" she replied softly. Min shook her head, smiling. "Orm is not dating Kunying. I asked because I saw them close, but Orm said there was no relationship between him and Ying," Min explained. Ling looked at him, slightly surprised. "Are you sure?" 3 days ago, Ying kissed Orm in front of me, although Orm didn't seem to return the kiss, Ling said, her voice sounding resigned. Min smiled slightly. I've known Orm for a long time and he's not the type to lie. Orm loves you so much that he's willing to make sacrifices to protect you, Min said, her voice sounding sincere. Ling looked at Min, her gaze serious. What do you mean by what you just said? She asked curiously. Min took a deep breath, trying to explain. I mean, Orm willingly resigned from his position as your assistant because he wanted to protect you. Min threatened him with photos and videos and would spread them if Orm didn't stay away from you, Min explained. Even now, Orm doesn't know I've reported. Min, I don't want him to get too involved in this. Ling was silent, her face looking pale. So the reason Orm resigned suddenly and stayed away was because of that threat? She asked, her voice trembling. Min nodded, then patted Ling's shoulder lightly. Yes, that's the real reason. I hope Ling can take good care of Orm and fight together for your love. Ling nodded slowly, a faint smile gracing her face. Thank you for everything, Min, she said sincerely. This is all I can do to bring you back together, Min replied softly. Now it's better for Ling to meet. Orm, let me handle it if any reporters start covering this case. Ling nodded once again, gratitude shining in her eyes. Once again, thank you, Min. Ling rose from her seat and approached her assistant, Best, who was waiting by the car. Best, I'd like to ask for the car keys. After this, you can go home, Ling said. Best looked at Ling with some confusion. Where's Ling going? Don't you want me to take you? He asked. No need, I can do it myself. You can go home after this, Ling replied as she held out a hand in front of Best. Give me the keys. Best complied, putting the car keys in Ling's hand. Thank you, Ling said and got into her car. Ling started the car engine and drove off, heading towards Orm's apartment. Along the way, her mind was filled with memories of Orm, and her heart was now filled with determination to set things straight and fight for their love. With slow steps, Orm walked down the corridor to his apartment unit. Arriving at the door, he took the key from his bag and opened the door before stepping inside, welcoming the silence of the small room where he always unwound. He placed his bag on the sofa, then sat down with a deep sigh. What a tiring day, he muttered as he stretched the muscles that were aching after a long day of exams. He picked up the TV remote on the table, pressed the on button, and started searching for a channel that would entertain him. His eyes moved to follow each show that appeared on the screen until it finally stopped on a news channel. The TV screen showed the face of Min Firavik, who was being led away by the police after being arrested for drug abuse, sexual assault, and a series of other problems. Orm's gaze was immediately serious, unable to take his attention away from the figure of Min seen on the screen. He watched Min being interviewed by reporters, giving an explanation, stammering about his case. In addition, Min was also present at the interview as a witness in the case. Why didn't Min tell me he was reporting Min? Orm muttered with a furrowed forehead, feeling confused. If Min was there, did Ling know about this too? The question simply slipped from his lips, while his eyes remained glued to the TV screen. Ding dong! The sound of the bell suddenly broke the silence, jolting Orm from his. He turned his head towards the door for a moment, wondering who had come. before finally getting up and walking towards the door of his apartment. When he opened it, a very familiar figure stood in front of it. "Peeling," Orm said in surprise, not expecting to see Ling there. "Orm," Ling said in a low voice, looking at Orm with tired-looking eyes. "Can we talk for a moment?" she asked in a pleading tone, sensing that Ling already knew everything. Orm, who usually avoided meeting Ling, nodded slowly. "Come in first, Fi," he said as he motioned for Ling to enter. A feeling of excitement came over Ling as Orm led her in. She followed Orm inside and they sat on the sofa together. A moment of silence enveloped the room. Orm just looked down, waiting for Ling to start talking, while out of the corner of his eye, he occasionally stole a glance at Ling. Gently, Ling reached out his hand, touching Orm's hand that felt warm in his grasp. Ling's eyes looked at Orm with a soulful gaze. "I already know everything. I already know your real reason for resigning," Ling said with a trembling voice. Orm gave Ling a puzzled look. "Where did Peeling find out?" he asked softly. "From Min. She told me everything when we met, before I came here," Ling replied in a soft yet firm tone. "Ah," Orm just muttered under his breath, not knowing what to say. "I didn't know that the reason you left was to protect me from Min. If I had known, I probably wouldn't have let that happen," Ling continued, looking at Orm sincerely. "I'm sorry for thinking that you left me because you didn't love me anymore." Orm shook his head slowly, looking at Ling with gentle eyes. "It wasn't Fi's fault. I should be the one apologizing for leaving Fi for no apparent reason, and also about the peeing incident 3 days ago," he replied softly. "Do you and Ying have more than a friendship?" he asked, his voice low but full of deep curiosity. Ling's eyes stared intently at Orm, searching for answers in his gaze. Orm smiled a little, then shook his head slowly. "I only think of peeing as my brother," he replied softly, trying to erase the doubt in Ling's mind. "Sometimes she helps me, though. Her last favor was a bit much." He paused for a moment, looking a little hesitant. However, for the sake of honesty, he continued, "He's already apologized about that." Orm's mind instantly drifted to the incident some time ago. When Ying had unexpectedly kissed him, Orm understood that Ying didn't intend anything more, and he also didn't harbor any special feelings other than thinking of. Ying is a sometimes protective older brother. Ling lowered her head for a moment. Guilt clearly reflected on her face. "I'm sorry," she said in a voice full of regret. "I'm sorry that I spoke badly to you that time. I was really burning with jealousy when I saw you together, and too quickly concluded that no." Orm just smiled faintly, looking at Ling gently. "Not a Fi, let bygones be bygones," he said, his soft voice full of understanding. Ling's right hand grasped Orm's hand tighter, while his left hand slowly reached out to touch Orm's cheek, giving it a gentle, soothing stroke. "I love you so much, Orm. Do you still love me like you used to?" she asked, her eyes starting to glaze over as she looked at Orm. Orm took Ling's hand and nodded with a small smile. "I love Peeling. There's no one else I can love but Peeling," he replied sincerely, his voice soft but full of honesty. Ling looked at Orm with great emotion, her heart filled with indescribable happiness. "I promise to protect you from anything, and I will never let anyone else stand in the way of our relationship," Ling said with conviction. Orm nodded slowly at every word Ling spoke. His heart was filled with unstoppable feelings of emotion and happiness. Tears began to roll down his cheeks, reflecting all the relief that had been bottled up. He looked at Ling with glassy eyes as if to thank her without saying a word. Ling smiled gently at Orm, who had finally let his emotions out. Lovingly, she reached out and wiped away the tears on Orm's cheeks, a gentle touch that felt so soothing. Slowly but surely Ling brought his face closer to Orm's, and he could feel Orm's warm breath touching his skin. The beating of their hearts blended into a meaningful silence. Eventually, the distance between them disappeared. Ling's lips touched Orm's gently, a kiss full of warmth and long-held love. The kiss was not just a series of gestures, but an expression of all the longing and affection that had been hidden. Orm kissed back, as if channeling every emotion that had long been tucked away in the corners of his heart to Ling. In the silence that enveloped them, time seemed to stand still, giving space for the two to express their deep love for each other without words. After a while, Orm slowly broke the kiss. He looked at Ling with a warm smile, and his eyes sparkled with happiness. Without hesitation, he then hugged Ling tightly, letting every feeling of relief and happiness that filled his heart flow through him. In that embrace, he found the peace he had been longing for. Ling returned Orm's embrace lovingly, feeling equally happy that the two of them had finally resolved the issues that had strained their relationship. Now, all the uncertainties and worries slowly faded away, replaced by a stronger sense of love and confidence that they could face anything together. In that embrace, they felt that all the obstacles that had tested their relationship only strengthened their love. They let go of each other, but still held on tightly, as if they didn't want to let a precious moment slip away.